Most people make decisions without realizing how much intuition influences their choices. Carl Jung studied this phenomenon and showed that intuition is not just a random guess but an advanced form of perception that picks up information before the rational mind can even process it. Ignoring this ability can lead to wrong choices and missed opportunities. Some rely solely on logic and overlook subtle signals, while others confuse intuition with impulsiveness and make rash decisions. However, there is a right way to use this perception to see what no one else sees and make better decisions. In this video, you will understand how intuition truly works, how Jung explained it, and, most importantly, how to develop this skill to make more confident decisions and transform the way you think and act. What is intuition, and how does it work? Intuition is a form of perception that occurs without structured logical reasoning. Carl Jung defined it as a psychological function that allows individuals to pick up information and recognize patterns unconsciously. Unlike sensation, which relies on direct and observable experiences, intuition identifies connections that are not immediately obvious. That's why, in certain moments, a person can reach a conclusion without being able to explain how they got there. This process happens quickly and automatically, without the active participation of conscious thought. In daily life, intuition can manifest as a gut feeling or a sudden realization. Someone might feel uneasy upon entering a room, only to later discover that something negative had happened there. This doesn't mean the information came out of nowhere. The brain may have picked up small details in the environment, facial expressions, shifts in atmosphere, and processed them without the person consciously noticing. This ability to detect signals and anticipate outcomes makes intuition a valuable resource for decision-making. Jung suggested that intuition works as a fast track to information stored in the unconscious before it reaches conscious awareness. This phenomenon can be seen in fields like art, science, and innovation, where ideas and solutions emerge spontaneously. Many groundbreaking discoveries happened because someone noticed a pattern or had an insight before they could rationally explain its origin. When well developed, intuition can help solve problems and guide choices in moments of uncertainty. An example of intuition in action. Carl Jung observed a case at Lake Zurich that illustrates the difference between a sensory person and an intuitive person. A couple used to place bets on where birds would emerge from the water. The man, analytical by nature, studied the wind, the current, and other visible factors to predict the bird's movements. Meanwhile, the woman, without following any logical reasoning, always guessed correctly, as if she simply knew the answer. Despite her husband's frustration, her intuition proved to be more effective than his sense-based analysis. This experience proves that intuition is not just a random guess but an advanced form of unconscious perception. The woman's brain was processing details that went unnoticed by her husband, small changes in the water, subtle patterns in the bird's behavior, or even unconscious recollections of past events. While he was trying to find a logical pattern, she had already integrated all the information automatically. In everyday life, this intuitive ability manifests in many situations. Some people instantly recognize when someone is lying, when a place feels unsafe, or when an opportunity should be seized, even without being able to explain why. Intuition as a survival tool. Intuition is not just for quick decision-making. Throughout much of human history, it has been crucial for survival. In primitive times, relying solely on the senses could be a fatal mistake. A traveler in a dense forest, for example, might not see an immediate danger but suddenly feel discomfort and change direction. Their brain may have picked up on subtle signals, such as the sudden silence of birds or an unusual scent, indicating the presence of a predator. This unconscious perception has prevented countless tragedies throughout human evolution. Today, this ability is still present, but it is often ignored in a world dominated by logic and technology. However, how many times have you had a bad feeling about someone or a place, only to realize later that there was a real reason for that sensation? Intuition remains a valuable resource, especially when the available information is not enough for a complete rational analysis. Intuition in the modern world. Although the challenges of contemporary life are different, intuition continues to play an essential role. A driver might feel a sudden discomfort and slow down without knowing why. Seconds later, the car in front of them slams on the brakes, and they narrowly avoid an accident. Their brain had picked up on subtle signals, an unstable movement from another vehicle, a change in traffic patterns, and processed it all unconsciously. This kind of perception extends to various fields. Experienced doctors sense that something is wrong with a patient even before medical tests reveal any abnormalities. Investors anticipate market shifts and make decisions before concrete data confirms their suspicions. Entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs have mentioned intuition as a decisive factor in strategic choices. What do all these cases have in common? Experience. The more someone is exposed to a specific field, the more their brain learns to recognize patterns invisible to others. Despite its importance, intuition is still underestimated in a world that prioritizes data and logic. However, some of the most impactful decisions in history were made by those who knew how to listen to this inner perception. But in the end, is intuition just an abstract instinct, or is there a real mechanism behind this phenomenon? Intuition and subliminal perception. Intuition is not a mystical phenomenon but a process based on subliminal perceptions, information captured by the brain without the conscious mind registering it clearly. This explains why experienced individuals can often predict situations before any concrete evidence appears. For example, in finance and business, investors sense imminent changes before any official data confirms them because their brains, trained by repetition, learn to recognize patterns that others miss. Similarly, a businessperson may intuitively feel that a deal is not beneficial without needing to analyze a detailed report. Small cues in tone of voice, facial expressions, and body language can indicate hidden risk. Research on subliminal perception shows that the unconscious mind is constantly picking up information that the rational mind ignores. This suggests that intuition is nothing more than a reflection of this hidden database, accessed automatically. However, not all intuitive people perceive the world in the same way. Some direct their intuition outward, picking up on subtle details in interactions and events. Others turn this perception inward, accessing insights from symbols and subjective experiences. Differences between types of intuitive. Jung identified two main types of intuitives, the extroverted and the introverted. Each processes intuition in a unique way, influenced by how their attention is directed. The extroverted intuitive is always focused on the external world. They detect patterns, recognize opportunities, and anticipate changes before most people do. Their mind is agile, constantly seeking connections between events, trends, and signals that others overlook. Investors who sense market shifts before the numbers confirm them, entrepreneurs who identify promising trends ahead of the competition, and strategists who predict political or social movements before they become obvious are examples of this type. Since they rely heavily on external stimuli, these intuitives tend to act quickly, often without being able to rationally explain how they reached a conclusion. The introverted intuitive, on the other hand, turns their focus inward. Instead of noticing patterns in the external world, they perceive subjective meanings and abstract connections, often before they can put them into words. This profile is common among philosophers, writers, artists, and researchers who see deep symbolism in events and ideas. However, because they process information more slowly and introspectively, they may hesitate to share their insights for fear of being misunderstood. While the extroverted intuitive reacts to the world, the introverted one deciphers hidden meanings, often anticipating trends and ideas that will only make sense to others in the future. Within these two broad categories, there are also subtle variations. Some intuitive individuals have a refined social perception, picking up on microexpressions, tone of voice, and subtle shifts in energy within environment. Others have a more symbolic intuition, connecting with hidden meanings that appear in dreams, visions, and unconscious patterns. There are also those whose intuition is highly practical, allowing them to solve complex problems instinctively. The main difference between these two types lies in the direction of their attention. The extroverted intuitive quickly processes information and makes decisions in the real world, trusting their ability to perceive patterns as they emerge. The introverted intuitive, however, needs more time to process their impressions and connect their insights to their vast internal repertoire of symbols and experiences. Both have a powerful intuitive capacity but use it in distinct ways. A clinical example of intuition. Carl Jung described a fascinating case that demonstrates how intuition can manifest through symbolic imagery. A patient reported feeling as if there was a snake inside her stomach. From a medical standpoint, this claim made no sense, but Jung recognized that this image could hold a deep psychological meaning. During treatment, the patient continued mentioning the snake, and as the sessions progressed, she described it as if it were moving inside her body. This detail suggested that her unconscious mind was trying to communicate something through a visceral sensation, even though she couldn't rationally explain it. Over time, she reported that the snake was rising through her body toward her throat. By the end of therapy, she said the snake had finally emerged from her mouth, revealing a golden head. To Jung, this transformation symbolized an internal process of change. What initially felt like a heavy burden within her became a symbol of something that needed to be understood and released. Her intuition led her to express this experience through imagery, even though she lacked full awareness of what it represented. This case illustrates that intuition is not limited to quick gut feelings or impulsive decisions. It also plays a role in how we process internal experiences and understand our emotional conflict. Often, the unconscious uses symbols and sensations to communicate something significant, something that has not yet been translated into words. The risks of intuition without sensory perception. Intuition can be a powerful tool, but when it is not balanced with sensory perception and rational analysis, it can lead to misguided conclusions. Jung described the case of a woman who lived in a brothel without realizing where she actually was. Despite having strong intuition, she ignored the obvious signs around her. Her disconnection from reality prevented her from processing clear information, making her vulnerable to misinterpretations and a lack of awareness about her own situation. This case highlights a common issue. When used in isolation, intuition can create illusions and prevent people from seeing facts as they truly are. This risk appears in many areas of life. Some individuals trust their gut feelings so much that they make major decisions without considering concrete data. An investor might blindly believe that a stock will rise just because they feel it, ignoring the fundamentals of the market. The same happens in relationships when someone insists that a person is trustworthy based solely on a positive impression, while overlooking clear signs of manipulative behavior. A lack of critical thinking can lead to poor choices, frustrations, and regrets that could have been avoided. For intuition to be a reliable resource, it must be balanced with an awareness of reality. When a gut feeling arises, the best approach is to test it, seek evidence that supports or challenges it. Relying solely on instinct can lead to impulsive and irrational decisions, while depending exclusively on logic can cause valuable opportunities to be overlooked. Finding this balance is essential for making more accurate and realistic decisions. Intuition and self-confidence. Many intuitive people hesitate to trust their own gut feelings because, most of the time, these perceptions do not follow a structured logical reasoning. Society tends to value logic and factual evidence, making it difficult to justify a feeling without a concrete explanation. If someone senses that a situation is unsafe or that a particular person is untrustworthy but cannot present rational arguments to support it, they may be dismissed by others. This fear of seeming irrational causes many people to suppress their intuition, doubting their own ability to perceive patterns before they become evident. Carl Jung considered intuition a legitimate tool for understanding reality, but recognized that using it effectively requires self-awareness. He observed that intuitive individuals often struggle with self-confidence, especially if they grew up in environments where their perceptions were constantly questioned or invalidated. When someone's intuition is repeatedly discredited, they tend to develop a mental block, avoiding their gut feelings even when they prove to be right. This can lead to regrets, as valuable opportunities are missed and warning signs are ignored out of fear of making mistakes. Building intuitive self-confidence happens when a person starts to observe and test their perceptions. Keeping track of intuitions and monitoring their outcomes over time helps to realize that many insights were correct, even when they initially seemed baseless. This practice strengthens trust in intuition and teaches how to distinguish a genuine insight from an impulsive emotional response. By doing so, intuition becomes a safer and more effective tool without the constant need for external validation. The greatest challenge is balancing intuition with an objective analysis of reality, ensuring that neither dominates decision-making entirely. The best approach is to use intuition as an initial alert and then seek information that can confirm or challenge it. When well developed, intuition not only assists in decision-making but also becomes a powerful resource for personal growth. Intuition and the perception of the psyche. At times, intuition seems to go beyond the limits of ordinary perception. There are reports of people who had premonitions about future events or felt an inexplicable connection with someone far away, without any prior communication. Carl Jung studied this phenomenon and noticed that certain intuitions occurred more frequently than chance alone could explain. He became interested in the research of J.B. Rhine, who investigated abilities such as precognition and telepathy, suggesting the possibility that the human mind could operate beyond conventional limitations of time and space. Some studies indicate that certain intuitive experiences cannot be explained solely by unconscious pattern recognition. There are cases of individuals who predicted disasters before they happened or who, without any warning, knew that a loved one was going through a difficult situation. For Jung, these phenomena could be linked to the collective unconscious, a deep level of the mind that connects human beings through shared symbols and experiences. This could explain why some intuitions do not rely solely on individual experience but seem to emerge from a broader source of knowledge. Despite the recurrence of these accounts, the topic remains controversial. Traditional science tends to reject phenomena such as precognition and telepathy because they are not easily measurable. However, even without a definitive explanation, many people report experiences that defy conventional logic. Jung did not see intuition as a supernatural phenomenon but as a legitimate function of the psyche that, under certain circumstances, could access information beyond conscious perception. He believed that statistical patterns could reveal the existence of recurring intuitive events, suggesting that intuition is far more than mere coincidence. Whether it involves identifying patterns from the unconscious or accessing information that is not yet evident, intuition remains one of the most fascinating mysteries of the human mind. For those who wish to develop it, Learning to recognize and trust their own insights can be an essential step. How to apply intuition in everyday life. Developing intuition begins with the practice of observing small signals and sensations. Keeping track of insights, thought patterns, and events that occur without an immediate explanation can help you understand how your intuition manifests. Additionally, comparing these perceptions with concrete information allows you to validate their accuracy and avoid making decisions based solely on vague impressions. Many people who train this ability report a significant improvement in how they handle complex situations, anticipate problems, and make better decisions. Jung emphasized that intuition can be strengthened through self-awareness. He suggested several practices that enhance the connection between the conscious and unconscious mind. Active imagination. This exercise involves observing the symbols and images that arise in the mind and exploring them without immediate judgment. This allows a deeper understanding of messages from the unconscious that often appear as unexplained intuitions. Dream journaling. Dreams are one of the main channels of the unconscious, and recording recurring patterns can help interpret intuitions that emerge in daily life. Mindfulness of emotions and bodily sensations. Many intuitions manifest as a subtle discomfort or a sudden sense of clarity. Instead of ignoring them, it is important to analyze and reflect on what might be behind these reactions. Jung also stressed that intuition should not be used in isolation but in balance with other psychological functions, such as logic and sensory perception, to ensure a more complete understanding of reality. Moreover, he suggested that exposure to new experiences and ideas expands intuitive capacity. The more a person engages with different fields of knowledge, the more material their unconscious has to process. Exposure to philosophy, art, and diverse cultures helps enrich the internal repertoire, allowing intuition to operate with greater precision. The key is to find a balance between trusting intuition and validating its impressions with concrete elements. By developing this ability with awareness, it can be used as a valuable guide for decision-making and personal growth.